Hi, in this course we are going to talk about model view controller. So iOS applications generally uses a design pattern called model view controller. So what is a design pattern? A design pattern is a way of organizing our code. So this model view controller, in model view controller our code is organized. If we see this diagram, we have a model, a controller and a view. So when we will be building the iOS application, we'll be either writing code for model, controller or view. So needless to say, any object in the iOS application will belong either to the view or to the controller or to the model. So the model is basically the data in our application. So it can be like a phone number, contact information or list of employees. Every data in our iOS application will be represented by our model. So model is what holds the data in our iOS application. The view is basically what we see on the iOS screen. The view is basically the presentation layer, and controller connects the view to the model. So the controller is an orchestrator which processes the model data and gives it to the view. So if we see this diagram, when there is a user action on the view, the controller is notified about the user action. The controller forwards that user action accordingly to the model, which may be updation of data, creation of data, or reading of data, or deletion of data. Upon successful upon successful transaction from the model notifies the controller and the controller updates the view. So this is how model view controller design pattern works. So if let me minimize this. So if we see the contacts application in the iOS simulator, we see a list of people. So this is the view part of the application. Now this data will be held by the model in the backend, and the controller would have fetched this data from the model and presented it and given it to the view for the presentation. So the view has organized our data in alphabetical order. So when I click a contact, so what has happened is the view has notified the controller that the contact was clicked. The controller went to the model and asked for the more detailed information of that contact. So the model gave the more details to the controller, and the controller has updated the view accordingly to show us more details about that contact. Yeah. So now, after knowing what model view controller is, let's jump right into Xcode and create a user interface. So we'll open Xcode and we'll open the app which we have been creating, and we'll go to main.storyboard file. So remember, the storyboard file is the UI file for our application. So once we click on main.storyboard file, we see a couple of things in our editor. So what we see is it's split into two panes. So this pane right here is the document outline pane, and this is our working area. So what we see here is the UI, and this is the outline. So if we go inside this, if we drill down, what we see is the view controller, which is the controller for our view in this case, which points to this view controller.swift file. And inside we have a top layout guide, bottom layout guide, and the view. So this view is what we will be designing. So on the right side we have a utility pane where we can see our UI widgets. If we click this button, which is the object library button, by default it will be on the file template library, which represents the code files, but we don't need them as of now. we will be opening the object library button, and we'll see a bunch of UI widgets that we can drag and drop onto our user interface. So what we see is a switch, an activity indicator view, and a label, a button. So what I'm gonna do is I'll drag drop a label just to see how it looks. So I'll pick the label and I'll keep it. I'll snap to this guide. So this guide is the default margin for our view, which is standard in the iOS application. So I'll place it here and I'll leave the label. So now I have the label here. I can resize it. I can change the label by simply double clicking the label and changing it to new label and pressing enter. I can also click this label and go to the inspector, where I'll see this 4 new buttons added. In this, I'll click the attributes inspector and I can change the label from here. So this time I'll name it as label from inspector, and I'll hit enter. So now what we see is our label is getting cut off. We can increase the size of the label by selecting that label and dragging this handle enough. And then what I'll be doing is I'll running the app in the simulator and I'll see how it looks, just for demonstration purpose. So there we go. Our app is installed and we can see the label from inspector being visible here. I'll stop the app. So the things to notice is our main.storyboard file is the main UI file. When we open the UI file, or when we open the main.storyboard file, we see something called as the document outline, which is the outline of our code, outline of our UI. So we can see basically all the controls here under the view. It also points to the controller, which is the view controller.swift file. On the right side of the editor, we see our design area, and to the extreme right in the utility pane, we have a button called the object library down below, which has all the UI widgets which can be drag drop to the UI panel. And on the top of that right side frame, we have something called as the attribute inspector, where we can change the background, the size, the label, and many other things. So that's all. I'll see you in the next video. Make sure to. That's right.